tear, it falls and hits the ground. A tree, it falls without a sound. A bird, it calls and sends you home. A man, he sits in the cold all alone.
Hi,
Hello,
how are you?
I'm doing good. This is what you're just going to upload? Is that kind of how it's going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
work?
So what we've got is a two-segment event. So we've got pre-recorded videos, and then we're going to have the live segment. So the live segment will
Uh-huh.
be over those 3 days.
Okay.
So the 2 days are the main live events where we're going to have, hopefully lots of speakers coming in and out. And
Yeah.
then the last day of the event will just be whoever really can and wants to kind of answer the questions and all that. So I'll just we'll do the first 2 days. I'll send everyone the questions like, hey, loads of people have asked all this. And then it will just be up to the individual speaker if they want to jump on there or not. But yeah, so
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Have you done one of these events before?
No, no, I haven't. This is my first,
I'm
but
so impressed. I'm
it's
so impressed. You're good job. Yeah.
It's been good. It's been good, and I've spoken to quite a few women already, and yeah,
Wow.
it's amazing. Like this community, I think it's a great space, and like we all
Yeah.
just love each other, and it's just really nice. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like unity, right?
yeah,
And something that brings you together, whether it's like positive or negative. Sometimes like hard situations that bring us together create some of the best relationships and longest lasting meaningful connections, right?
yeah. Well, that's what I've heard a lot of people say. I've joined these groups, and we actually meet up, and they're like my best friends now, and it's years
Oh,
on. And yeah, I mean, there's something about life experiences that bring you closer together, and create those connections. That's just, in this scenario, it is horrible, but it's so beautiful at the same time.
yeah.
They say it's the worst club with the best members, and I think that's true.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel very, very honored to be included. Kind of feel like I like don't belong, like I haven't earned my right like so many of you.
Of
So I don't
course,
know.
of course.
I just
No,
I
when you
it,
said
I
that, I was like, but you've gone through this too, like infertility, right? Not being able, like even if
mhm.
you're able, but you've got something that, means that you can't, that
Yeah.
is still a sense of infertility. You're still like dealing with grief. You're still dealing with a loss of not being able to do something, that
Yeah.
we're told we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to be able to do.
Yeah.
So you that's still a loss. That's still something you have to deal with. And then, I think you said you lost an embryo as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that is a
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah.
I'm at this
Yeah.
point where I've heard
Okay.
so many stories and so many things, and I'm just I understand what an embryo is now, and I didn't before, and that's a baby. You lost a baby, and that's you can accept that, and it's you
Thank you.
are a part of this as much as anybody else is. And something that's been upsetting me the most is when people say, oh, it was just a chemical loss, or it was just an embryo. And it's like, no, don't
Yeah.
undermine it, because I know how you feel. Like we all feel the same way. Even if you lose an embryo, even if you lose to a chemical pregnancy, those
Yeah.
I know, because I've spoken to so many women, and the emotions are the same. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've all gone through these emotions, and this season, and you are as much part of this as anybody else. So
Well, thank you. Thank you.
don't
I
feel
really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Validation is awesome. So I
Yeah, and
appreciate
I think it's
it.
just, our society kind of sometimes just paints this picture of, it's just a clump of cells. We're all a clump of cells, by the way. So I think it's just forgotten, people just kind of devalue, undervalue. And yeah, we just need to remember that, we feel the things we feel for a reason. And
Yeah.
And that validates it more than anything else, more than some, doctor person saying, oh, it's just this. We know what it is. We feel it. We don't need you to explain it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm very thrilled and excited to meet you. And you're as wonderful as I thought you would be. So
thanks.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mandie, and being here and coming on to talk to me. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and sort of tell everyone a little bit about you, and then we can kind of go more into your story, and I know I might ask you some questions, and yeah.
Awesome. So my name is Mandie Rudd-Sherman. I am 33 years old. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am a respiratory therapist by trade, and I also do social media where I educate people on cystic fibrosis, which is the disease that I was born with and that I have, which has caused my infertility. And since I have started the surrogacy process to grow our family, I now try and provide education on my page about that as well.
Wow. So cystic fibrosis is what you've got that kind of has impacted your fertility and ability to have children. So how has that affected you? Like going all the way back to the beginning, even from like whether you wanted to have kids or you didn't, like how have things sort of progressed? Did you always know that it was going to be a problem?
I was told my whole life that I would never be able to have children. So it's something that I had to accept really young. I knew I always wanted to have children. I always wanted to be a mom and grow my family. So I kept hope alive that somehow, some way that would happen for me. And, doctors have kind of told me a lot of things that haven't come to fruition. And I've been able to beat the odds, you might say. Having cystic fibrosis, I'm 33 years old, and when I was born, they told me that I would only live till I was 18. So the life expectancy is like really young. That's part of the reason why, because most people with CF when I was born weren't even making it into adulthood. They were passing away earlier. And so they just kind of like tell you as you're growing up, like, don't expect to get married. Don't expect to go to college. You'll be lucky if you graduate high school. Like your long-term goals are like your teenage years, if that, And so that was kind of what was always looming over me. And my family, I have wonderful parents that taught me a great mindset and to live with faith and hope and just be like, we're not going to focus on the life expectancy. We're not going to focus on the death sentence or the countdown clock above our head. We're just going to focus on like what we have now and proactively like prepare your health for what may come. And so I do believe that mindset probably had some like manifesting power so that I didn't pass away in my teenage years, like I didn't just think like, oh, I'm going to go like eat, drink, be married, party because tomorrow I'm going to die. I was like, okay, if I could live past 18, like what would I want my life to look like? So I still took like the ACTs and SATs and applied for college where other people with my same disease, they weren't doing that because they're just like, no, I just want to focus on the here and now. Which I did, and I lived life to the fullest because I'm like, I really might only have 18 years. But just in case, I'm going to try and set myself up for some sort of success. And, my parents taught me that like when I was really little. So yes, I had heard my whole life I wasn't going to have kids. I'd heard my whole life I would die as a teenager. And I learned that hope can move mountains. Just having that hope gave me something to hold on to. And that hope was the drive that I needed when things were dark. So part of my disease and why I struggle with infertility is one factor was the age, right? People with my disease living long enough to carry a baby. The second thing is my disease is a respiratory disease. So I am in the hospital frequently with lung infections, and I have loss of lung function. My lung capacity is not normal. I do 3 hours of lung treatments every day. Like I hook up to a machine to help me be able to breathe. And when somebody's carrying a baby, it's hard for them to breathe anyways, but I already struggle with like lower lung capacity. And so that creates a risk for my health, which is one of the reasons why the doctors would advise against it. And another concept of my disease is my body actually doesn't digest my own food. My pancreas is insufficient and doesn't work. So I have to take medication to digest my food. And then as the food passes through my intestines, my whole digestive system stinks, and only about 1/3 of the nutrients that I eat gets absorbed. So then you have the idea of like, to sustain my life, I'm on a 4,000 to 5,000 calorie a diet per day, which the normal is like 2,000, right? So just to sustain mine, I'm like eating double. And then to be able to eat enough to like grow and sustain another life, there's just so many different complications.
Yeah, and obviously like the absorption of that as well. So you might even have to do like 4 times
right
to just kind of be able to get that into the baby as well. And obviously, like you said, like pushing on the lungs, and the lungs are the problem as well. Yeah.
Correct. Men that are born with my disease, they are infertile as well, in the sense that their vas deferens actually doesn't form.
Oh.
It's just like a really interesting, we don't really know why that happens, but their statistics are they're 99% sterile. You can't say 100 because there's always an outlier, right? So that is how men struggle with infertility, dealing with cystic fibrosis. And then the females, we just have all sorts of complications. And we also have our reproductive organs have really, really thick mucosal linings. So it's difficult for like the sperm to make it to where it needs to be. Our periods are severely irregular, scar tissue everywhere. So it's just there's a lot that makes it very difficult to get pregnant and then to like grow a fetus and a baby.
God, that must be so different. But I suppose, I've been talking to a lot of ladies, and one of them, she's gone through quite a lot in her life, and I was like, oh, that must be really shocking for you. And then I was like, but then it's what you know. So it's a very odd thing, like being someone who's not in your shoes, who hasn't experienced that, and kind of being like, oh, that must be so hard. And then you're like, but that's literally all you've known. Like that's been your life. And I find it so frustrating when doctors say things like, you're not gonna do this, you're not gonna do that, as if they know everything. And they give you these death sentences, and they are wrong sometimes. And when people fight and they have that hope and they're like, I'm not taking that diagnosis lying down, there is power in that. And you're right, it's hope. It's a drive, it's a thirst for life. And I think if you didn't have that upbringing of your parents going, we can still do this, like, don't listen to that above your head, it could have very easily gone the other way, and you could have kind of given up, and maybe you wouldn't even be sitting here. Because if you don't have hope, like, what do you have? Like, if you're just like, oh well, I'm just gonna whatever. It's
right. It's just like, okay, I'll just kill over and die. Like,
oh my goodness,
I don't know. Like, I'll just roll over. Okay, you tell me I can't have kids or X, Y, or Z, and you just take it. Like, I do appreciate like the bluntness and the frankness of my doctors, because that's just how I like to receive information. I don't really like to sugarcoat things. So I respond well to that. I can take it and then evaluate it for myself and decide what to do for it, instead of kind of like beating around the bush. But I know so many people that can't handle that because it just shuts them down,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it is definitely like, I think, a skill that I had to learn because, you know, I mean, I've been going to doctors every 3 months since I was born. So I've had to deal with that like frankness and
Yeah.
not shutting down from it, right?
Lack of bedside
But
manner
like,
as well.
yeah. And so what you said, you know, it is all I've known. So I did have many years to come to terms of not carrying a child. I am married. I've been married for 8 years. That was a conversation that I had to have with my now husband when we were dating, like, which is a make or break it for people, you know, in a relationship. Like, hey, I need you to know I can't have children. Are you okay? One, either never having children, or two, not having a biological child, you know? And it obviously, the conversation went well with my now husband, but that wasn't my experience through my entire years of dating, you know? So it played an interesting dynamic in my life when I was trying to find a partner and somebody to support me through all of it. Because a lot of people suffering from infertility, it's not something that they have years to come to grips with. You know, it's unexpected and it's thrown onto their lap. And that's kind of what I had to do to anybody that I was dating. You know, I think everybody just kind of hopes and dreams like the norm is to have children and you're going to have your own children and it's going to be easy and you can have kids whenever you want, you can plan them, you know. That's the picture that Hollywood and everybody paints. But that's not the reality. And so I think all of us in this community have had that reality of like, oh, that's not how it is for me. But I had a few years to handle it where my husband, you know, I just kind of spring it on him and we had to have those hard discussions. And, you know, I was like, hey, and ultimately he was so kind and he was like, you know what, like, I want to be with you for you, not for like what children you could give me. And that was just very, very sweet. So we entered the journey holding hands and figured, you know, I was like, look, I have hope. I'm not sure how, but I think we're going to be able to grow our family sometime. I'm not planning on dying. I do everything I can to stay healthy and to fight those odds. And like, that's how I want to handle this too. So if you're willing to go into that with me, like, let's do this.
Yeah. And I think that is the mindset, you know, that is the living mindset. You look so healthy and, you know, ready and wanting life. And I think that, you know, look, I'm not saying it saves everyone, but I mean, you look great. And it's obviously doing wonders for you. So
thank you. Mindset is really big for me. So I focus a lot on that and just really try to live my life proactively instead of reactively. So I go to the doctors every 3 months and I get a lot of bad news. And so I just kind of try and in each area of my life, like set myself up for a little bit of success every day. And that looks different, but I've gotten to where I am. And so I think there's something to that. I keep experimenting every day.
yeah, it must be kind of a sort of touch and go, kind of play it by ear type experience, especially if you're getting different news every month and having to go in and kind of unravel things. I mean, I get annoyed just having to go and get checkups sometimes, and I couldn't imagine going all the time. So,
well, again, it's all I know. So,
puts it into perspective, though, and I think you sharing your story, you know, that is going to help people with the same condition tenfold because they're seeing success. They're seeing someone who's 33, who, you know, isn't supposed to be here based on the doctor's, you know, so-called predictions. That's just amazing. And hopefully they'll see it as like a miracle, and that can happen to me too. And then they'll get a first for life too, and be like, yes, I can make these plans and I can do these things. I think that is the most important thing. And I love that you're focused on mindset. So how did you and your husband kind of move into this process of, okay, we're ready to have kids now and we want to do it this way? Like, how did you get to that point? I know you said you lost an embryo. How did that go?
So I do have a 7-year-old son, and I've known for like a long time that I wanted to give him a sibling, and we wanted to expand our family, and we knew that it wasn't me, it wasn't going to come from me. So we're like, okay, so how are we going to do this? What is our avenue? And we thought a lot about adoption, and we thought a lot about fostering, and neither of them like felt right. And so we kind of just thought, okay, it's the timing's not right, so we will just keep these avenues open, and when the timing is right, we'll know to like move forward. And I actually have a friend who also has my same disease, and she grew her family from surrogacy. She's 10 years older than me, but I connected with her. And when I heard her story, it was like, the idea came to me, and I was like, that's another option. Like, that's something we could do. And when I like thought it through, I was like, I believe this is the path that we're supposed to take to grow our family. And so we started down that path, and it was tricky. I think we've had 3 failed like surrogacy matches and attempts. And so it was heartbreaking and kind of wanting to give up, like, okay, maybe this isn't the path, because when you hit like fail after fail after fail, it's hard to stay positive and motivated and like willing to try again, right? But that's where kind of the hope was. And we knew like, hey, we just have to keep our hope alive, and we have to keep our feelers out there and be willing to take any path that we feel is right in the time. And so we weren't set just like, we are only doing surrogacy to grow our family, or we are only doing, adoption to grow our family. We kind of just left all the doors open, and we're waiting for the right thing at the right time. And I ended up having one of my friends, she came to me, and she didn't know that we were doing this. We'd kind of kept it under wraps. It's a little bit kind of taboo. Surrogacy is a little bit. I live in the States. It's legal here. People do it. But it's kind of more the Kim Kardashians and the celebrities are the ones that do surrogacy, and they do it because they have the money, and their careers are based on their bodies. And, so it's just kind of like you do surrogacy if you're this elite status. And when my friend had told me, my mentor with my same disease, that she did it, she normalized it in my brain that like anybody can actually do this. This is an opportunity for anybody. And I qualify just as much as anybody else. I don't have to have a career based on my body or my looks or have a multi-million dollars, like if I'm willing to put in the work, I believe it will all fall into place. And so we weren't advertising that we were doing this. But my friend, she came to me and was like, I've been thinking about this, and I don't know if this is something you and Rick would even want, which is my husband's name, but I would love to carry a baby for you if that's something you guys are interested in doing.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
It was like crazy. And I couldn't even believe what was happening to me. And so I told her, I was like, can you just wait so I can go get Rick? Because if we have this conversation and then I go tell him, he's not going to believe it, because it's so like unreal that somebody came to us, right? And so like that's just so rare, I feel. But yeah, so my cute friend offered, and we are tomorrow. So when this airs, will be like a few more weeks, but tomorrow is February 3rd, and we will be 20 weeks pregnant at that time.
Beautiful. I'm actually at that point right now myself.
Are you serious?
20 weeks, yeah. So
Congratulations.
me and your surrogate, we might be having a baby at the same time. That would be awesome.
Do you know like your due date?
Yeah, it's the 20th, but apparently I might be a few days like early, like it might be a few days like later than that.
Okay.
So tomorrow you're 20 weeks, and I think tomorrow I'm supposed to be 20 weeks. So technically I'm 20 weeks now, but because they kept my same due date, but they were like, but technically it's probably a few days, like, yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is such a great connection. We'll just have to, keep in touch, follow each other on Instagram and see.
It'd be really cool if we have
birth stories and oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's so wonderful though, and I'm so great. I'm so glad, and just that's a great thing that your friend's done, and that you have that chance.
Thank you.
I'm a Christian. I don't know if what's your beliefs, but that
Yes, yeah,
that just like that's like a blessing, and like timing, and like I instantly think like that's God. That's God blessing you and blessing your family. That's just amazing. I love it.
Yeah. I fully believe that. So, and she does too. She was like, I've never had this thought or this idea ever. And she's like, I don't feel called to be a surrogate, but I feel called to be a surrogate for your baby. Like, I think this is your baby and God that are, giving me this opportunity.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
she's so, it takes a special person to be willing to do that.
It does.
And she's my angel on earth. That's what I call her.
That is so beautiful. And I've heard of a few women who have gone for surrogacy, and they said, you expect to, have no problems because, you're the one with the problems, and, I've got this woman who's going to have a baby for me. Fantastic. But then sometimes, women, it's 1 in 4 still have a miscarriage, and surrogates are included in that. And, you're not guaranteed a baby, like you said, like you went through different surrogates and they didn't work out. And it is like, it's such a mind mess because you're just told these things over and over, like IVF will work, this will work, surrogacy will work, and your body will do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it doesn't, thanks.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, if we don't laugh about it, we'll cry, because it's so insane.
And we've all cried. I am confident everybody here has cried a lot. So let's laugh today. Focus on that.
And I think it's like what's wrong with me? It's everything sucks, and but it's so easy to fall into that. And we all feel it. It's amazing that it's just so similar. Like you can get
we're not alone. You feel so alone in this process, and connecting with other people that have been through something similar, even if it's not the exact same. There is that kinship and that connection and that sisterhood and friendship, which is just, 1, so validating, and 2, comforting. And both of those things are irreplaceable and priceless.
Exactly. I ask pretty much anyone who has faith and has gone through these processes, these seasons, okay, have you been angry with God, and have you had a go at him?
It's kind of hard because having faith is what helps us deal with things that are supposed to work that aren't supposed to work, right? Hope and faith, very, very similar for me. And it's like, okay, my earthly physical body is not working. So then I'm going to trust science because they've got it all laid out. X plus Y plus Z equals baby. And when that's not working, it's like, haven't, like, God is in all the details, and why is he not making any of this work, you know? And why can't I have it? Why can't it be for me? And so there is, it's easy to turn your anger to something and somebody that you can't control, and something and somebody that is all forgiving. You know, for me, it's like, it's easy for me to take my problems to the Lord because I know he loves me and as I am, and is going to forgive me for saying mean things to him. and honestly, I'm like, it's easier for him to forgive me than for me to forgive myself, you know? And when I harbor the blame, or luckily during this process, I haven't had to feel or put any blame on my partner, because I'm the problem, you know. So I carry the blame, you know. But it's like, I have to have trust in the medical system because they're the one that holds the answers. And I have to have trust in God because he's the one that has, like, guided me along this path. And I know he's going to be the most forgiving. So that is where I choose to communicate my anger and my frustrations, because I try not to harbor them inside.
That's a good way to look at it, as like an outlet, as a way to kind of get it out, because God wants us to love everyone. And how can you love everyone if you're holding on to that guilt and that anger and that upset? So if you hand it to him, you may be having a go at him at the same time, but if you hand it to him, it's easier to kind of feel that contentness and kind of love everyone. That's so true. That's a really awesome way to look at it. Because I didn't think of it like that. I was just like, oh, I'm allowed to have a go at him. Great. Okay. I still have a go at everyone else sometimes.
And that's okay. That's okay. I mean, do you have children yet?
I do. I have 3 kids. I had them first.
Okay.
Before loss, and then we lost 2 babies, and that was just because I had 3 kids. I was like, oh, this is, you do the thing and have a baby. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always happen. It was a good wake-up call, but also really terrible.
Yeah.
It's good to have understanding and be humbled in that sense. But I would have preferred it to be in a different way. not that way.
Yeah. I was asking if you had kids because I like to think of, so like my child, he's learning, he's growing, he doesn't know everything, right? And he makes mistakes. He messes up, and it's really easy for me to forgive him, right? Even when he like yells at me, I'll get like upset, but then I can easily forgive him, and I have so much hope and so much faith in him, and I see his potential and like what he can be and what he can become. And I try and view my relationship with God that same way. Like, he is my parent up above, watching me go through life, and I can turn to him in anger or yelling, and he's going to quickly forgive me for that. He wants me to succeed, and he's going to help me succeed, just as I'm going to do for my youngin. When he makes mistakes or messes up, I'm going to always be there to pick him up. And so that's I don't know how I kind of try and view things, like he is my parent in heaven, looking after me, helping me learn and grow and succeed. So he will forgive me when I yell at him.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that.
He will forgive you too.
That's so true. And I, like with my kids, you do. I obviously sometimes tell them off, and I think in that you even when they're yelling at you or like moody at you, I'm not saying, well, I get more screaming at this point because I have a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So I sometimes get yelling.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay.
But
we sometimes are yelling, right? What is going on?
Yeah, my 7-year-old's great though. He doesn't really do any of like yelling or shouting or anything like that. But my 2-year-old and my 4-year-old, Yep, yep. He used to, obviously, my eldest, but not so much now. But yes, screaming, yelling, like shouting, whatever it is, whatever they feel like going through.
Well, and I've noticed with my son now, so you have a 7-year-old, same as mine, his feelings are less screaming, yelling, tantrum, and more into the harboring internally, like he makes a mistake and it's like, oh, I'm just the worst, mom. And I'm like, you are not the worst. That mistake like had nothing to do with you. You know, it's a mistake. It's not you. A mistake happens. And so I'm connecting with him. This mothering journey has really helped me reflect, because again, that like guilt and blame that we hold, like, this is my fault, like I'm the worst, I can't have a baby, my body is the worst, like, and then I'm like, I don't think God feels that way about me, and I don't think he feels that way about my body. Like, I think he's going to help me figure out a way to make it happen, just like how I would with my own child. You know, he's not the worst when something bad happens. Something bad happened, but that doesn't mean it's him. And I want to help teach him that. And it's a learning process for him, just like it's been a learning process for me.
Talking about your body, I mean, if you're born with something, that is not in any way your choice or like lifestyle made or anything like that. Like, you were born the way you were born. And so, you know, your body is your body. You can't blame yourself for your body. You didn't choose it. You didn't make that happen. And even down to the women who do have lifestyle illnesses or problems, like, if they had known they were going to create those problems, they wouldn't have created them, especially if it meant they couldn't have kids or would have struggles having kids. We've got to try and stop this sort of blame game, like where we're blaming ourselves, we're having to go at ourselves, and just kind of accept that this is where we are right now and find the best steps forward. Because if we're just like blaming ourselves for everything, it's going to be really hard to go anywhere, because we're just constantly going, oh, it's so crap. And you do believe it. You believe it the more you say it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And holding that in, like that negative energy, like destroys your self-worth. And how do you move forward? It's so difficult. We've got to like step out of that. And, you know, that's where I'm like, okay, you just got to have that flicker of hope, because that hope is what can get me out of the dark hole that I'm in, you know, knowing like, I don't see an out. I don't see a way this is going to change. How am I going to afford surrogacy? How am I going to, like, I didn't even know if my body could safely do an egg retrieval with what I was born with, you know? I didn't know. It's hard because we want to plan everything out and have it work, right? Like, you do the thing, you have a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't work. You do IUI, you have a baby. You do IVF, you have and so it's nice to have a plan because it brings comfort and security. But that's not always the case. And so having just that little bit of hope, I always picture it like I'm down in a big pit in the dark, and I can just look up and see that little star in the sky, or that light bulb just above my pit. And I'm like, hey, that is my hope. I can get there. I can see that. I might not have it yet, but I can see it. And so I'm going to look at that and hang on to it until I can get there. And just that little hope, that little glimmer, you know, it is what helps me at least like get out of those dark pits and let that negativity go out, so that I can be full of light and love and rejuvenation, which then in turn brings like motivation and helps me take the next step to like make the call to gather information, to slowly, you know, kind of move forward to the next thing that hopefully will work and hopefully will give me a baby.
Yeah, that is so powerful, that pit imagery. Wow. Just that little glimmer. That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that.
Thank you. It helps me. Hopefully it will help somebody else.
Yeah, it's so easy to kind of like just cloud over the sky and not see any light and not see any glimmer. I thought about it the other day, like about hope and about things. And I felt like a moment where I just felt really low. Like everything just suddenly felt just like nothing was going right. Everything was going to be terrible. And then I kind of got this thought in my head. I was like, well, what made this moment? Like, because I was fine like a second ago. And I'm still the same person. I'm still going through the same thing. I'm still experiencing, the same body, same time, same place. What's been the little change? And that kind of just put my head into this perspective of like, if you can keep reminding yourself that nothing's different, you're the same, your surroundings are the same. If you're going through something, if your body, isn't doing what you want it to do, it's not going to change tomorrow. It's, if it's going to be your life, then, well, if you felt okay today or you felt okay yesterday, then why not tomorrow? Why not right now? Because there's no point in feeling like, oh, everything's terrible if nothing's changed.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. And like bringing that mindset back, you know, you don't know what the moment was, or you might have been able to figure out what the moment was that made you feel so dark and gloomy, but it was just one moment, and it changed everything. And think about like you can do the same thing, but switching it. You're in that dark and very like overcast. All you need is that one moment to switch you back to light and hope. Yeah. Wow, that was really nice. Thank you for sharing that.
During this time, this season for me, I'm pregnant. After having loss, I'm sort of thinking about, I'm terrified of losing another baby. And I just got to this point where I was like, well, I just want to enjoy this pregnancy, because my last one, I was miserable because I was expecting another loss, and I did have another one. And I was like, well, this time I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm not saying I've enjoyed it the whole time, because I have been worried and a mess in points. But there's something I keep putting into my head, and I'm just like, well, I'm pregnant right now. Like, I know I'm pregnant right now. So there's a baby right now, and I believe it's alive. And so that is what's going to keep me going each day. And if something happens and I find out that that's not the case, then I'll have to deal with that when it comes up. But for right now, this is my reality. This is what I am. And I think that has kind of pulled me through this sort of season. But yeah, it's just keeping that perspective of reality versus what's in your head sometimes, because it can, like, I mean, I always say it's the enemy, because like I can't think of anything else, because like when those things just invade like straight away, it just seems so quick and so random. And there isn't always an explanation. It just happens. So then it's like, well, don't let the enemy win. Don't let the darkness win, because we have something way stronger. There's light, and all we have to do is turn it on.
Do you go to do you have any depression, or have you like dealt with that during this process?
I had depression all through high school. Yeah, and it was a very like dark time. But as I got sort of into my 20s, I was still experiencing it, and I didn't stop until I had my first son. Yeah, so I believe it's mainly hormones that kind of did that. I went on the pill at one point, and that seemed to kind of help a little bit. But there was still moments, really dark moments. And yeah, it wasn't until I had my first child where I actually felt balanced, and I had this kind of sense of like purpose and all of that. And then sort of from then on, I kind of kept building myself up. But with my second child, I actually had postnatal depression, which kind of brought me back into that. But then I kind of managed to get through that in like I think it took about 6 months to a year. But yeah, it's interesting when you've gone through something like that. it kind of does
Yeah.
put other things into perspective in terms of like, you don't want to go back there. It's
Yeah.
not a nice
Yeah.
place to be.
I didn't know if maybe you like, I do a lot of therapy too. And so that has like helped me learn a lot of my coping skills. And I didn't know if maybe you had done that. I've done EMDR. I don't know if you've heard of that type of therapy.
No, that sounds
It's really great. I'm trying to remember I believe it's what the acronym EMDR. I believe it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it's this thing that it used to start like you had to move your eyes like this, but I hold on to like little electrical paddles that sends pulses to like both sides. So basically they're like firing one right after another. And the science behind it is that it activates both sides of your brain at the same time. And we go through a traumatic experience, and we are going to then emotionally reprocess the situation and desensitize the negative emotion with it, right? So I've gone through some really just traumatic things in my life, just my personal life, medical health, and the loss of an infant or a child at any stage, or dealing with infertility, is trauma. And EMDR has really helped me to desensitize those trauma emotions and reprocess it so that I am no longer triggered by it.
Yeah, I might add some links about that kind of therapy down the bottom, so people can kind of look more into it if they're interested, if they're going through, a hard time. Because you're right, a lot of women will experience like PTSD and all these other things when going through infertility, pregnancy loss, and all those sorts of things. And obviously not to mention like what we went through in our high school, primary days, like at home and stuff. So we just have all this trauma that just builds up. So
well, and just like going through and having those losses, like there is that PTSD, like how do I even get to the point of where I want to try again? Sometimes you get stuck, you get frozen, and working through those things has helped me to find the light and find the hope to like gain the courage, like, okay, this isn't debilitating anymore, like I've worked through these things, like, and I'm ready to move to the next step and try again. It's been very, very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, I mean, something that helped me the most with was something my mum said. She said, you're not going through PTSD right now. She's like, that's in years' time when you're through the baby stage and you're like, you're still experiencing these things. She's like, right now, it's completely logical. It's completely reasonable. Like, this is not like PTSD is logical, reasonable in terms of like going through stuff, obviously, but in terms of right now, she was like, you're still going through the season. She was like, you've lost babies and you're pregnant, so you're literally you're repeating the season that you've just been through, and it could happen again. So like with surrogacy, you've been through that season already, and now I'm guessing you're way further through than you've ever been. So obviously there still might be a bit of fear, but then you're like, well, I've gotten this far. So, so I think it's just being reasonable with ourselves and knowing that it's okay to be worried, and it's okay to feel those emotions, because we're literally reliving what we've already experienced, and it had a negative outcome the first time. But that doesn't mean it's going to have a negative outcome. That, we could have the most beautiful outcome, the exact outcome we want, and I'll be praying for yours.
Thank you.
But yeah, it really is just mindset. It really is. And that is the crux of it. But it's really hard to kind of see that crux when you're constantly like in that flight or fight mode and that kind of, moment. So I'll definitely link what you were talking about below, because I think that might help. Some ladies here.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, you said you have a 7-year-old. So how did that sort of happen?
So that is a whole crazy. I'm glad you believe in miracles because he's a miracle baby. So I actually was able to carry him. And so yeah, it's just defies all odds. So I found out that I was pregnant and we weren't trying. I was even on birth control because I knew how, like, if I got pregnant, what a risk it was for my body, right? So I have like this, my body's not supposed to carry babies. I'm on birth control trying to like prevent any pregnancy because I'm trying to keep myself healthy. And I found out I was pregnant and it was crazy. Both my husband and I had really mixed feelings. We were like, holy cow, this is a miracle. We are so lucky. And at the same time, like, we were worried what it meant for me. So I went to the first people that we told was my cystic fibrosis doctors and my team, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to need their help to do this. And they were very kind. You know, I think everybody loves babies. So for the first like 2 minutes, they all like celebrated. This is awesome. I'm like, yay. And then came the reality of like my blunt, frank doctor. And he told me, he's like, you have to terminate this. He's like, my job is to, one, keep you alive, and two, keep you healthy. And growing a baby directly threatens both of those. So my medical and professional opinion is that you discontinue this. And that kind of wasn't what my husband and I were expecting, because we were like, you know, they've helped us like work through so many different difficult health problems, you know, and we've come out on the other side. And that's kind of what we thought it was going to be like. Wow, yeah, you're not supposed to have babies, but now that it's happened, like, let's figure out how to make it through, right? And it wasn't that. And so I'm like, all right, well, okay, let me just like think about this. And I was like, I want to have like a frank conversation, like, tell me what my odds are. You've already told me your medical opinion. Now I need to like gather data so that I can think things through. I can converse with my husband, see what we need to do, and then to pray about it. And I'm very, very lucky where I live. I see one of the very top cystic fibrosis doctors. He's known worldwide for his research and knowledge. And so I do feel like I'm seen by the elite, and I trust him. And so I'm like, Kate, like, give me the statistics. And so he was thinking through it and looking at his notes, and he'd been treating cystic fibrosis for over 40 years at this point. And he's like, in my practice of over 40 years, I've had 8 patients to conceive. And he's like, currently right now, I have over 400 patients. And he's like, that's not like 8 babies. That's just 8 patients that happen to do what you do. Like, oh my gosh, an egg and a sperm came together, and like, I'm at this point. And I was like, okay, so how many babies is that? And he was like, 1, maybe. And he's like, actually, so I was number 8, and number 7 happened to be 5 months before me. And he shared that story. He's like, she didn't listen to my advice, and she carried the baby, and both her and the baby passed away in delivery. He's like, that was 5 months ago. He's like, I have no more information, no new research, no more knowledge, like nothing to help you. And, you know, he's like, he talked to like a bunch of other cystic fibrosis physicians around the world. And like, we found a support group, and there happened to be 21 women in the world with my disease that had children. And so I joined a network with them. And, you know, it was kind of, my husband and I, we didn't know what we were going to do. We like counseled with our ecclesiastical leader. We prayed, we, you know, like figured out what we wanted to do. And ultimately, my cute husband, he left the decision up to me. You know, he's like, this is your body. This is a miracle that we've been blessed with, and I trust you, you know, you to do what you want. And I didn't know how it was going to turn out, you know, especially with the knowledge that I had gained and the experience of the gal like right before me, so close in time. And I actually just decided, I was like, you know what? I have the, like right now, I am pregnant. You know, going back to what you said, like you have to live in the now. Like right now, like I am pregnant and I need to celebrate this. And I said, right now, I am pregnant. And I do believe this is a miracle. And I do believe this is a blessing. Like I am living something that they said I would never be able to do. And I'm doing it. And I was like, if this is the way I go out, if this is the last thing I get to do with my life, I'm going to do it. And I went forward, you know, my husband was like, awesome. He's like, I knew that my chances of having you, I probably wasn't going to grow old with you, that I'd only get you for a handful of years, you know. And he's like, let's do this. And so we moved forward with it. Throughout my pregnancy, it was very, very, I get why my doctor advised what he did. I was in the hospital all the time. There were more than one time that I should have died, that my son should have passed away, but we just kept living. We survived one thing and we kept surviving. And I don't know how it happened. It's the whole thing is a miracle. I know how it happened because science defies it, medicine, none of it makes sense. The only thing is like that it came from God. And he's 7 and I'm 33, so we're both still here, and it's crazy and amazing and wonderful, and it was scary and frightening and
would have been terrifying,
miraculous and so fun and so exciting. Like I lived 1,000 lives in those 37 weeks that I carried him.
Yeah.
So,
and your husband was like, never again.
My husband was like, we got a miracle, like let's not ask for another one. And I was like,
let's not test like, God.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll take what we got and figure out something else.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And yeah, I go to God first. I'm like, oh, it's a miracle. But when you have a case like yours and it's like literally defying all odds, it is a miracle. Like you can't, like there's only 21 other women in the world who have survived what you've survived. And that is just, you know, that shows you it's a miracle and it's a blessing, and there's no way that you can explain it medically or, you know, scientifically. It's just, you know, you are a miracle sitting in front of me, you know. You shouldn't be here, like based on science. So actually I spoke to a woman yesterday and she defied odds as well, and she said that she saw the light because she died and then she came back, and she said she saw the light and God said to her, I'll always be with you, but I'm not ready for you yet.
Okay. I had tissues in here, but I can't reach them to go. Oh my God, that is so
I keep mine close.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, I cannot wait to hear her speak.
It's amazing.
Wait to hear her interview.
Yeah. I'll like
who is it?
Link it down the bottom as well.
Okay.
Britt. Yeah, Britt. She's an ex. Well, she is an army veteran. But yeah, the story is just amazing, and she literally defies every odd. Like she shouldn't be here at all. Like everything she's gone through, you're just like, you are a miracle. Like the whole of your life is like, you know.
Wow.
But yeah, absolutely beautiful. And I'm so glad that you got that experience, and, you know, thank God for that blessing, and to be able to live at the end and like experience your son growing up. And and you know, I was going to say as well, like, there's more gratitude. There's more gratitude when you have experienced something, because you look at everything else and you go, wow, like I'm blessed, like this is amazing. Because I didn't think of anything, like I wasn't looking at any blessings or being grateful or anything like that when I had my first 3 kids. I was just like, oh yeah, I did the thing, I got the thing. And there was this kind of ungratitude, like just not whatever. And then I lost 2 babies, and then I saw my kids completely differently. And I wish not that I had gone through this experience before, but that I had that mindset that this is amazing and that I'm so lucky, because you don't always get the rainbow. You don't always get the fairy tale and the miracle. And every child really is a miracle.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that your story is just so amazing, and I'm so glad you're still here and you're able to tell that story, because it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Thank you. I feel very lucky and very blessed to be here. And I try and, you know, I'm like, I shouldn't be here, but I am. And so I try and like really just, first of all, live each day to the fullest, recognize that gratitude. Because like you said, you wish you hadn't gone through what you've gone through, but you wish that you had that same gratitude with your first 3 kids. And you don't know what you don't know until you know it, you know. And all of us in this infertility loss experience, we now have that gratitude because we didn't know it before, you know, but we do now. And how blessed we are to have that now, and how we can recognize each of those miracles, that every kid, every baby, every child is a miracle, because there's so much that could go differently for it not to happen, but it does. And how lucky are we that we all get to be together? You know, you said to me at the beginning, like, I can't remember exactly how you worded it, like a club that we don't want to be in, but once we're here, we realize it the worst club, but the best members and the best people, you know. And I really feel that. And like this conference event that you have put on, like, so unifying, and friendships are going to be forged, and hope is going to be created. And you know, I just think it's going to be a domino effect for so many of us to keep fighting this difficult battle, and to be able to get that motivation and that internal strength and that bonding, which is priceless. And I thank you for what you're doing here for all of us, all women around the world.
I hope so much for what you're saying. It's like, I went into this thinking this needs to be done, like there isn't anything on this scale, and it has to be done. Like, why hasn't it been done? And I was like, why is it me doing it? And I was like, well, I'm gonna do it. And it's been so confronting and beautiful, and like emotional. And I said to my husband, like, there's moments where like I wish that I hadn't even started this at all. But then there's also really amazing moments where I'm like, this has strengthened me. Like, this has strengthened my faith. This has strengthened my compassion. Like, there's just like it's beautiful and horrible. And yeah, I can't even explain it. Like, words don't work enough. Don't work well enough to explain. But yeah, I so hope, I so pray that this event will make a difference and will help women, because this season is hard, and we shouldn't have to go alone, and we certainly shouldn't have to kind of shut up and experience it, you know, it really needs to be something where we shout out from the rooftops what we're going through, and there's people like crowding around us, giving us hugs and standing with us in silence, and yeah,
lifting us up, holding us up when we can't stand, when our knees and legs and feet are weak from all that we've already battled and been through. You know, like, we are here for each other, and you are doing that for each of us. So thank you for taking on such a insurmountable, monumental task. You are lifted by angels to make this happen, and I am very thankful for what you are doing, because you know, you're an angel in all of our lives, making this happen, fulfilling the need that wasn't there. You're making it happen. So thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that. I've been getting so many like compliments from ladies like doing these things, and I'm like, I don't feel like, you know, this is my thing. Like I feel like I'm just being led on this journey, like I'm being dragged like along. I'm just like, I'm gonna just put this thing out there and, and put it together. And yeah, I'm like, please God, just help me, just like make it work somehow. And yeah, getting more speakers, and yeah, it's really beautiful and kind of overwhelming, but really lovely at the same time. But thank you so much for joining me, Mandie, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. And I really think it's going to bring hope to so many people, because, you know, like I said, you're a miracle. You defied odds, and that gives people hope, and that changes mindsets. And I think that is priceless, absolutely priceless.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.